The wind howled off the Chicago River, whipping her hair as her toes hung off the freezing steel ledge. 60 feet below, the black water waited. Then, the most dangerous man in the city shattered the silence. "Don't do it, Genevieve!" Dominic's voice cracked with desperate panic. "I need you alive!" The sterile, fluorescent lights of Arthur and Sterling's downtown Chicago office hummed a low, monotonous tune. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the rest of the forensic accounting floor had long since abandoned their cubicles. Genevieve Harper rubbed her tired eyes, staring at the glowing spreadsheet on her monitors. She was 31, meticulous to a fault, and engaged to be married in exactly 4 months. Her life was supposed to be perfectly predictable, but the numbers in front of her were anything but. She had been assigned to audit the books for Cobalt Harbor Developments, a massive commercial real estate conglomerate buying up the city's industrial waterfront. It was supposed to be a routine tax compliance review. Instead, Genevieve had stumbled upon a ghost in the machine. A highly sophisticated, automated skimming algorithm was bleeding Cobalt Harbor dry. Over the past 8 months, exactly $4.2 million had vanished, routed through a labyrinth of shell companies in the Cayman Islands under the umbrella name Apex Holdings. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't a clerical error. This was embezzlement on a staggering scale. Seeking guidance, she printed the damning ledgers and marched into the office of her direct supervisor, Thomas Albright, the following morning. Thomas, a balding man with a penchant for sweating through his expensive suits, had taken one look at the papers and blanched. "Leave this with me, Genevieve," he had said, his voice unusually tight. "Don't mention this to anyone. It's likely an internal restructuring issue. I'll handle it." She should have listened. She should have gone home, planned her floral arrangements with her fiancé, Liam, and forgotten the name Cobalt Harbor altogether. But Genevieve's fatal flaw had always been her unrelenting need for the truth. That evening, the rain in Chicago was torrential, turning the streets into slick black mirrors. Genevieve hurried into the cavernous depths of the Lower Wacker Drive parking garage, her heels clicking rapidly against the damp concrete. The shadows here felt oppressive, the heavy scent of exhaust and damp earth suffocating. She reached into her purse for her car keys, her fingers brushing cold metal, when a heavy, gloved hand clamped over her mouth. A muffled scream died in her throat as she was yanked backward into the blinding. 2 men in dark suits forced her into the cavernous back seat. The engine roared, and the SUV sped out of the garage before she could even process the abduction. "Breathe, Miss Harper. If we wanted you dead, you would have been left in that parking garage." The voice came from the opposite end of the sprawling back seat. Genevieve shrank against the leather, her eyes adjusting to the dim interior. Sitting across from her was a man who seemed to absorb the shadows around him. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that screamed old money. This was Dominic Russo. Even in the insulated world of corporate accounting, Genevieve knew that name. The Russo family owned the docks, the sanitation unions, and, allegedly, half the judges in Cook County. Dominic was the newly ascended head of the syndicate, a man rumored to be as ruthless as he was calculating. "What do you want?" Genevieve choked out, her entire body trembling. "You found something that belongs to me," Dominic said smoothly, pouring a glass of amber liquid from a crystal decanter in the console. He offered it to her. She shook her head violently. He took a slow sip. "Cobalt Harbor is my legitimate front, and someone inside my organization is bleeding me dry to the tune of $4 million. You, Miss Harper, found the leak before my own accountants did." "I gave the files to my boss," she stammered, tears pricking her eyes. "I don't know anything else. Let me go." Dominic leaned forward, the faint scent of cedar and expensive leather washing over her. The proximity was terrifying, yet strangely magnetic. Your boss, Thomas, called one of my lieutenants 2 hours ago, offering to sell the information of the leak back to me for a handsome fee. He thought he was negotiating. He is currently learning the error of his ways in a warehouse in Cicero. Genevieve gasped, a cold dread washing over her. The rat stealing from me is smart, Dominic continued, his voice dangerously soft. They are covering their tracks with banking codes that my men do not understand. I need a forensic accountant who isn't on my payroll to track the money to its final destination. I need the name behind Apex Holdings. Go to the police, she whispered. Dominic actually laughed, a dark, humorless sound. The police work for me, Genevieve, and they are far too blunt for this instrument. This requires finesse. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder, tossing it onto the seat beside her. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside were candid photographs. Her fiancé, Liam, leaving his investment banking firm. Her younger brother, Leo, laughing with friends outside his medical school campus at Northwestern. I am a businessman, Miss Harper, Dominic said, his gaze pinning her down. I prefer mutually beneficial arrangements. You will come live at my private residence. You will have full, unrestricted access to my servers. You will find the man who is stealing from me. If you succeed, I will pay you $2 million, and you will return to your quiet, predictable life. If you refuse, or if you try to run, he tapped the photo of her brother. I cannot guarantee the structural integrity of Leo's medical career, or his spine. Tears finally spilled over her cheeks. She was trapped. A pawn pulled off a corporate chessboard and dropped directly into a mafia war. Do we have an understanding? Dominic asked. Genevieve looked at her brother's smiling face in the photograph, then up at the monster sitting across from her. She slowly nodded. Yes. Good, Dominic said, leaning back into the shadows. Welcome to the family, Genevieve. The St. Regis penthouse sat on the 42nd floor, a sweeping expanse of glass, marble, and cold, modern art. It was a gilded cage overlooking Lake Michigan, and for the next 3 weeks, it became Genevieve's entire world. She was given a sprawling guest suite and a makeshift office equipped with the most powerful servers she had ever seen. The door to the penthouse was guarded 24/7 by Silas, Dominic's imposing, heavily scarred right-hand man, who spoke in monosyllables, but always politely offered her chamomile tea at midnight. At first, the dynamic between Genevieve and Dominic was purely hostile. She treated him with icy professionalism, working grueling 18-hour days to trace the phantom funds. She wanted nothing more than to find the thief, save her brother, and escape. But as the days bled into nights, the lines began to blur. Dominic was not the screaming, violent thug movies had led her to expect. He was painfully disciplined. He worked just as late as she did, often sitting in the leather armchair in her office, silently reviewing his own endless stacks of contracts and ledgers. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the morning, they would talk. Why does this specific $4 million matter so much? She asked one night, rubbing her temples. You're a billionaire, Dominic. The amount is a rounding error. Dominic looked up from his papers. The harsh light of his desk lamp cast deep shadows across his sharp jawline. It is not about the money, Genevieve. It is about the audacity of the betrayal. In my world, a leak is a drop of blood in the water. If I don't find the shark that bit me and butcher it in front of everyone, the rest of the ocean will tear me apart. Weakness is the only sin I cannot afford. She saw, for a fleeting second, the crushing weight of his empire, The constant paranoia, the isolation. She found herself, horrifyingly, empathizing with the devil holding her hostage. "I'm close," she told him softly. The funds from Apex Holdings are being run through a cryptocurrency tumbler, but they cash out at a private server in Luxembourg. I'm running a decryption protocol on the server's firewall now. I should have an IP address and a registered name by tomorrow. Dominic stood up, walking over to her desk. He looked down at her, his dark eyes softening just a fraction. He reached out, his thumb gently brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. The touch sent a violent, shocking jolt of electricity down her spine. "You are extraordinary, Genevieve. When this is over, you will have my protection for the rest of your life." She swallowed hard, looking away. She already had a protector. She had Liam, her sweet, boring, dependable Liam, who was probably tearing the city apart looking for her. The next afternoon, the decryption protocol finished. Genevieve sat alone in the office, her hands trembling as the final lines of code fell away, revealing the origin point of the embezzled funds. The IP address pinged back to a luxury apartment building in the Gold Coast neighborhood of Chicago. She typed furiously, pulling the lease agreement associated with the router. The name on the screen flashed in bright, damning green. Liam Caldwell. Genevieve stopped breathing. The room spun around her. No, it was impossible. Liam was an investment banker at Vanguard Trust. He didn't know anything about Cobalt Harbor. But then, the puzzle pieces began to lock together with sickening precision. 2 months ago, Liam had borrowed her secure work laptop, claiming his was broken. He had asked for her multi-factor authentication codes, joking about how intense her accounting firm's security was. He hadn't just been checking his emails. He had been planting the backdoor malware into her firm's access point to Cobalt Harbor's servers. Liam was the thief. He was stealing from the Mafia, and he had deliberately routed the initial hack through her security credentials. If Dominic's internal security had found the leak themselves, they would have traced it directly to Genevieve. Liam had set his own fiancée up to take the bullet for his theft. A choked sob tore from her throat. Her entire life, her relationship, her upcoming wedding, was a meticulously crafted lie to rob the Russo family. The heavy oak door to the office clicked open. Dominic walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. He stopped dead when he saw her face, pale as a ghost, tears streaming down her cheeks. "What is it?" he demanded, the softness from the previous night vanishing, replaced instantly by the cold Mafia Boss. He rounded the desk and looked at the screen. Dominic stared at the name. Liam Caldwell. He knew who Liam was. He had seen the file. He looked down at Genevieve, who was violently trembling, waiting for him to pull a gun. She had brought the enemy into his house. She was the fiancée of the man trying to ruin him. But Dominic didn't reach for his weapon. He looked at her shattered expression, the absolute devastation in her eyes, and realized she was a victim just as much as he was. "Genevieve," Dominic started, his voice thick with a strange emotion. Before he could finish, a deafening explosion rocked the penthouse. The floor-to-ceiling windows of the living room shattered inward in a chaotic hail of tempered glass and fire. The shockwave threw Genevieve backward out of her chair. The lights died instantly, plunging the suite into smoke-filled darkness. Liam hadn't just been stealing. He had been funding a coup. He had paid off the rival Moretti cartel to eliminate Dominic before the audit could trace the money back to him. And Liam knew exactly where Genevieve was being kept. "Down!" Dominic roared. He tackled her to the plush rug just as a barrage of suppressed automatic gunfire tore through the drywall of the office, shredding the monitors that held Liam's name. "Silas!" Dominic bellowed into the comms watch on his wrist, pulling a heavy Glock from his shoulder holster. "Breach on the south elevator, boss!" Silas's voice crackled, accompanied by the sound of heavy gunfire. "There's a dozen of them, heavily armed. You need to get her out through the maintenance shaft. Now!" Dominic hauled Genevieve to her feet. Her ears were ringing, her mind fractured by the betrayal of the man she loved and the sudden violence erupting around her. "Stay behind me. Do not let go of my jacket," Dominic ordered, his eyes wild and protective. They sprinted through the smoke-filled hallway of the penthouse. Bullets chewed through the expensive artwork and marble pillars around them. Dominic fired back with lethal, practiced precision, dropping 2 masked men in tactical gear who breached the main foyer. They reached the service corridor, Dominic kicking open the heavy steel door. "Down the stairs, go!" he shouted. Genevieve ran, her lungs burning, the reality of her nightmare fully setting in. Her fiancé wanted her dead to cover his tracks. The only person standing between her and a firing squad was the head of the Chicago Mafia. They burst out of the ground-floor maintenance exit, the cold, howling Chicago wind hitting them like a physical blow. They were blocks from the river. Sirens were beginning to wail in the distance, but the screech of tires told them Liam's hitmen were already circling the block. "The bridge!" Dominic yelled, pulling her toward the rusted steel structure spanning the dark waters of the Chicago River. "I have a safe house on the other side. Run!" But as they reached the center of the bridge, 2 black SUVs violently cut off the opposite end, blinding them with high beams. Doors flew open, and armed men stepped out. They turned back, but another set of headlights blocked the way they had come. They were trapped, suspended over the freezing black water. Genevieve looked at the men advancing with assault rifles. She looked at Dominic, who had stepped in front of her, raising his pistol, preparing to die defending a woman he had kidnapped just 3 weeks ago. She knew what she had to do. The men were here for Dominic, but they were also here to silence her, the only witness to Liam's cyber trail. If she was gone, Dominic might have a chance to negotiate or fight his way out without worrying about dead weight. She had been betrayed, used, and her life as she knew it was already over. Before Dominic could stop her, Genevieve scrambled backward, climbing over the icy steel guardrail. The wind howled off the Chicago River, whipping her hair as her toes hung off the freezing steel ledge. 60 feet below, the black water waited. The Moretti cartel's hitmen were closing in from both sides of the bridge, their assault rifles raised. "Don't do it, Genevieve!" Dominic's voice cracked with desperate panic, shattering his usual cold composure. "I need you alive." She looked over her shoulder at the man who had kidnapped her, the man she was supposedly meant to fear. In that split second, she realized Dominic Russo was the only person who hadn't lied to her. Liam, her fiancé, the man whose ring she wore, had orchestrated all of this. He had stolen the money, framed her, and sent a hit squad to erase the evidence. "I'm dead either way!" she screamed over the wailing sirens. "Survive, Dominic. Make him pay." She let go of the railing and fell backward into the abyss. The impact with the water was like being struck by a concrete wall. The freezing temperature of the Chicago River instantly paralyzed her lungs. Darkness swallowed her whole. She was sinking, the heavy wool of her coat dragging her down into the murky depths. Her vision spotted with blackness. This was the end. The ultimate betrayal had led to a watery grave. Suddenly, a powerful grip clamped onto her collar. Dominic had dived in right after her. Fighting the deadly current, he hauled her upward, his powerful legs kicking toward the faint glow of the city lights above the surface. They broke the water, gasping violently for air. "I told you!" Dominic roared over the rushing water, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. "I need you alive!" Gunfire erupted from the bridge above, bullets hissing as they struck the water around them. Dominic dragged her under the shadow of a concrete pylon, using the darkness to shield them. Minutes later, the hum of a boat engine vibrated through the water. It was Silas. Dominic's loyal enforcer had commandeered a small maintenance skiff, pulling them from the freezing water, just as hypothermia threatened to stop Genevieve's heart. "Chicago is gone, boss," Silas said grimly, throwing heavy thermal blankets over them as he steered the boat toward a hidden outflow pipe on the industrial south side. The Morettis bought the precinct. Liam Caldwell just went on the evening news. He gave a tearful interview, saying you murdered Thomas Albright and kidnapped his fiancée to cover up your embezzlement. Genevieve violently shivered, coughing up river water. He framed me?" "He didn't just frame you," Dominic said, his jaw clenched so tight it looked carved from granite. "He painted a target on your back for the FBI, Interpol, and every rival family in the country. If we stay in America, we are dead by sunrise." "Where do we go?" she whispered, the sheer terror of her reality crushing her. She was a fugitive, an underdog stripped of her life, her career, and her name. "To the one place on earth Liam's money and the Moretti's reach cannot touch us," Dominic replied, his dark eyes locking onto hers with a fierce, burning promise. "We are going to disappear." 72 hours later, a heavily modified Gulfstream G650 touched down on a private ice-covered runway in the desolate heart of Yakutia, Siberia. Stepping off the plane, the brutal, 50 below zero air hit Genevieve like a physical blow. This was the Sakha Republic, a frozen wasteland of endless taiga forests and diamond mines, completely off the grid. Dominic's safe house was a sprawling, brutalist fortress, carved into the side of a snow-covered mountain, guarded by a private army of ex-Spetsnaz operatives, loyal only to the Russo bloodline. For the first 2 months, the isolation of Yakutia was suffocating. Outside, the world was a deadly, frozen white void. Inside the heavily fortified compound, Genevieve slowly healed. The dynamic between her and Dominic shifted in the frozen silence of Siberia. The billionaire Mafia Boss and the disgraced corporate accountant became partners in exile. They spent their days in the compound's subterranean command center, huddled over encrypted satellite terminals. "Liam is funneling the stolen funds through a legitimate asset management firm in London," Genevieve noted one evening, the glow of the monitors illuminating her face. She had spent weeks hacking through international banking firewalls, utilizing back doors she had learned at her old firm. "He's partnered with Kensington and Roth. He's using the $4 million he stole from you to leverage a massive buyout of your own legitimate real estate holdings in Chicago." Dominic stood behind her, his large hands resting on the back of her chair. The proximity was intoxicating. In the vast emptiness of Yakutia, they had only each other. "He thinks I am dead in that river," Dominic murmured, his voice a low rumble. "He is getting sloppy." "He sent an encrypted email to a contractor today," Genevieve said, her voice tightening. "He's planning a massive wedding. Next month. To the daughter of the Moretti boss." The silence in the room was deafening. Liam hadn't just betrayed her for money. He had traded her life for an alliance with the cartel. Dominic gently turned her chair around. He knelt in front of her, taking her trembling hands in his. The dangerous, ruthless Mafia Don looked up at her with a vulnerability that stole her breath. "He took your life, Genevieve," Dominic said softly, his thumb tracing the knuckles of her hand. "But I swear to you on my family's soul, I will give you a new one. I will tear down his empire. I will clear your name, and I will lay his entire world at your feet." Genevieve looked into his dark eyes. She wasn't the naive accountant anymore. Yakutia had forged her into something harder, something colder. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. "I don't just want his empire torn down, Dominic," she whispered, a new, ruthless fire burning in her chest. "I want to be the one who burns it." A slow, dark smile spread across Dominic's face. The underdog was finally baring her teeth. 6 months after the incident on the bridge, the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria in Chicago was a sea of diamonds, expensive champagne, and cutthroat power. Liam Caldwell, dressed in a bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo, stood at the center of the room, raising a glass. Tonight was the merger gala. Apex Holdings was officially absorbing the remnants of Cobalt Harbor. Liam had won. He was wealthy beyond his wildest dreams, engaged to the ruthless Moretti heiress, Isabella, and the ghost of Genevieve Harper had been officially declared dead by the state of Illinois. To the future, Liam toasted, flashing a charismatic smile at the crowd of corrupt politicians, cartel lieutenants, and oblivious corporate executives. To the future, the crowd echoed. Upstairs, in the security control room overlooking the ballroom, the real future was already unfolding. Genevieve sat at the primary terminal, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. Beside her stood Silas, holding a suppressed Heckler & Koch MP5, keeping the bound and gagged hotel security guards quiet. "Firewalls are down," Genevieve whispered into her headset. "I am inside the Cayman accounts." "Execute the protocol, Maya Regina." Dominic's voice crackled in her ear. Genevieve didn't hesitate. She had spent months in the frozen wastes of Siberia writing a custom, aggressive phantom worm virus. With a single keystroke, she unleashed it. Down in the ballroom, Liam's phone buzzed. He checked it, expecting a congratulatory text. Instead, it was an automated alert from Banque Privée Suisse. Withdrawal, $14 million. Balance, $0. Liam frowned. A glitch. It had to be. Then, his secondary phone, the encrypted burner he used to communicate with the Moretti cartel, vibrated violently. Offshore account 1, emptied. Crypto wallets, drained. Moretti syndicate, holding fund, liquidation complete. Balance, $0. Liam's face drained of all color. He dropped his champagne flute. It shattered on the marble floor, drawing the attention of the surrounding guests, including his soon-to-be father-in-law, Don Moretti. "Liam?" Don Moretti barked, his eyes narrowing. "What is wrong with you?" Suddenly, the massive digital projectors that had been displaying the Apex Holdings logo flickered. The corporate branding vanished. In its place, giant, blown-up documents appeared on the screens around the room. They were wire transfer logs, emails, audio transcriptions, unmistakable, undeniable proof that Liam Caldwell had embezzled from the Russo family, pinned the blame on Don Moretti's rival, and, most damning of all, proof that Liam had secretly been skimming off the top of the Moretti cartel's own funds for the past 3 months to fund his lavish lifestyle. The ballroom erupted into chaotic murmurs. Don Moretti looked at the screens, then slowly turned his terrifying gaze to Liam. No, wait," Liam stammered, backing away as the cartel boss's bodyguards began to unbutton their suit jackets. "It's a hack. It's Dominic Russo. He's supposed to be dead." "He is," Don Moretti growled. "But my money is gone, and your name is on the routing numbers." Before Liam could turn and run, the heavy mahogany doors of the ballroom swung open. The room fell dead silent. Dominic Russo walked in. He wore a sharp black suit, his presence commanding the absolute terror and respect of every criminal in the room. And walking right beside him, her arm linked through his, radiating cold, untouchable power, was Genevieve Harper. She wore a stunning, backless crimson gown that swept the floor, her chin held high. She looked nothing like the terrified accountant Liam had sacrificed. She looked like a queen. "Dominic," Don Moretti said cautiously, raising a hand to halt his men. "Don Moretti." Dominic nodded respectfully. "I apologize for crashing your celebration, but it appears Mr. Caldwell owes us both a significant amount of money." Liam stared at Genevieve, as if he were looking at a ghost. "Jen? How? I saw you fall. You're dead." Inches from the man who had ruined her, inches from the man who had ruined her life. "You should have made sure I hit the bottom, Liam," she said, her voice echoing perfectly in the silent ballroom. "Genevieve, please," Liam begged, a pathetic tear rolling down his cheek. He fell to his knees, clutching at the hem of her dress. "I loved you. They forced me to do it. I can get the money back. Just call the cops. Let me go to prison." Prison was exactly what Liam wanted. He knew that if he went to federal prison, he would be protected from the Mafia. He wanted the easy way out. Genevieve looked down at him, feeling absolutely nothing but cold, Siberian ice in her veins. Hard karma had finally come to collect. "Prison?" Genevieve tilted her head, a cruel smile touching her lips. "I don't think so, Liam. The police don't handle matters of this magnitude. This is a family dispute." She turned her back on him and walked back to Dominic. Dominic looked at Don Moretti. "The money Liam stole from your accounts, and mine, has been anonymously donated to various charitable foundations across the globe. It is gone. Irretrievable. As for the boy..." Dominic gestured to the blubbering Liam on the floor. "He is all yours, Don Moretti. Consider it a wedding gift." Don Moretti smiled, a terrifying, predatory smile. "A generous gift, Dominic. My men will ensure Mr. Caldwell repays his debt in full." Liam screamed as two massive cartel enforcers grabbed him by the arms, dragging him out the service doors. His screams faded down the hallway, leaving a heavy, definitive silence in their wake. Justice hadn't just been served, it had been flawlessly executed. Genevieve looked up at Dominic. The storm was finally over. The debts were paid, her name was cleared via an anonymous data dump to the FBI, and the man who had thrown her to the wolves had been fed to them instead. Dominic wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her flush against him in front of the entire underworld of Chicago. He claimed her, not as a captive, but as his equal. "Shall we go home, Mrs. Russo?" Dominic asked softly, the danger in his eyes entirely replaced by fierce, unwavering devotion. Genevieve smiled, resting her hand against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Let's go home." Did Genevieve's revenge satisfy your craving for justice? This story proves that the most dangerous enemies are sometimes the ones we love, and the fiercest protectors come from the shadows. If your heart raced during this Mafia betrayal, hit that like button, share this video with your fellow drama lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more breathtaking stories.